Hello and welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported in a headline, U.S. sent cash to Iran as Americans were freed. The article opens with, the Obama administration secretly organized an airlift of $400 million worth of cash to Iran that coincided with the January release of 4 Americans detained in Tehran, according to U.S. and European officials and congressional staff briefed on the operation afterwards. Wooden pallets stacked with euros, Swiss francs, and other currencies were flown into Iran on an unmarked cargo plane, according to these officials. The U.S. procured the money from the central banks of the Netherlands and Switzerland, they said. It continues, the money represented the first installment of a $1.7 billion settlement the Obama administration reached with Iran to resolve a decades-old dispute over a failed arms deal signed just before the 1979 fall of Iran's last monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Now there are a number of troubling items with this. First of all is the obvious that the Obama administration merely chalks up as coincidence that the money was paid at the same time American hostages were released. Oh, but let's not call that ransom. For if it was ransom, then that would empower the Iranian government to continue to grab more hostages. And they haven't grabbed more hostages since then, have they? Well, actually they did. The Wall Street Journal reports that 2 more Iranian Americans have since been arrested since the cash shipment. Another troubling aspect revolves around the $1.7 billion settlement. The International Criminal Court, or ICC, located in The Hague, Netherlands, is the setting in which the Iranian government brought a $10 billion lawsuit against the U.S. because the federal government had stiffed the Iranian government out of $400 million that was supposed to buy U.S. fighter jets in 1979. Apparently, the jets were never sent. So they filed a lawsuit in the International Criminal Court to get the money back, as well as gobs more, they said, was accumulated interest on the $400 million. Founded in 2002, the ICC is not part of the American justice system, as outlined in Article 3 of the Constitution. So America has no responsibility or allegiance to this world body. Historically, Democratic administrations have sought to work with the ICC and its governing bodies, while Republican administrations have distanced themselves. And the Obama administration is no different, seeking to work more closely with the ICC. In our opinion, the Founding Fathers would have viewed this as an entangling alliance to be avoided. Of course, they would also not have supported American intervention in foreign governments to prop up or install leaders friendly to the U.S. But that's precisely what happened in Iran in 1953. In this book, The Invisible Government, it states, there is no doubt at all that the CIA organized and directed the 1953 coup that overthrew Premier Mohammad Mossadegh and kept Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi on his throne. But few Americans know that the coup that toppled the government of Iran was led by a CIA agent who was a grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt. Now, given all the secrecy surrounding the money shipment, of which the Wall Street Journal reports that the Obama administration has refused to disclose how it paid any part of the $1.7 billion, it appears that the invisible government is alive and well. The book defines this invisible government as that which is run by America's intelligence and espionage apparatus. Published in 1964, the book points to the CIA as being at the center of this invisible government. On a side note, back then they didn't need to worry about private email servers that could have exposed operatives or friends of the U.S. The Washington Examiner reported over the weekend, it says Hillary Clinton recklessly discussed in emails hosted on her private server an Iranian nuclear scientist who was executed by Iran for treason, Senator Tom Cotton, who's representative of Arkansas, said Sunday. He continues, I'm not going to comment on what he may or may not have done for the United States government, but in the emails that were on Hillary Clinton's private server, there were conversations among her senior advisors about this gentleman, he said on Face the Nation. Cotton was speaking about Shahram al-Amiri, who gave information to the U.S. about Iran's nuclear program. So tell us again how Hillary Clinton should be trusted with national communications. And do you think she would expand or curtail the tentacles of the invisible government? So getting back to the book, the authors conclude, the invisible government emerged in the aftermath of World War II as one of the instruments designed to ensure national survival. But because it was hidden, because it operated outside of the normal constitutional checks and balances, it posed a potential threat to the very system it was designed to protect. And that brings us to today. With the bulk of the federal government operating outside of the normal constitutional checks and balances, would a constitutional amendment take care of the problem? Or how about a series of amendments? How do you get a federal government, which includes all of those agencies that you do not see or even know exist, to abide by the checks and balances? The constitutional limitations already exist. Adding more amendments will not help unless they are designed to cancel out previously passed amendments like the 16th and 17th Amendments. Much like the Obama administration giving legitimacy to the ICC merely through participation, adding amendments to curtail the activities of Congress or any part of the federal government when they already exist only legitimizes the current scope of federal tyranny. What this does is to basically start the negotiation process at the current tyrannical level instead of recognizing the original limitations and returning to them. Much like the ICC, the United Nations uses its pretend authority to make an end run around the sovereignty of this country. The New American reports in a headline that says, UN announces support for Obama's nationalization of police. It states, the United Nations has now publicly endorsed the Obama administration's illegal efforts to federalize America's local police departments. A UN official also offered to provide technical assistance to the U.S. government in implementing its radical demands. Specifically, a UN official from Kenya touted one of the many schemes used by the White House to impose unconstitutional federal regulations on local law enforcement. Dubbed consent decrees, the plot involves extremist bureaucrats at the Obama Justice Department threatening, bullying, and suing city governments into submission to Obama's demands. The UN lawyer called for the administration's commandeering of cops to be beefed up and increased to help nationalize as many of America's police departments as possible. Citing international law, the UN figure also attacked gun rights and the concealed carry of firearms. The latest UN assault on the God-given rights to keep and bear arms, protected by state and U.S. constitutions, came after a deluge of similar attacks coming from the global body, and its widely ridiculed Human Rights Council in particular. While the U.S. government is not currently represented, some of the most ruthless communist and Islamist dictatorships on the planet enjoy seats on the outfit. So by funding and participating in the United Nations, we add a level of legitimacy and credibility that is certainly not earned, not deserved, and not constitutional. The same can be said during discussions of adding further amendments to the Constitution. Do these amendments establish legitimacy to the current unconstitutional level? If so, those advocating for them do not understand the problem, nor can answer how the federal government will be forced to obey the new amendments on top of the existing constitutional limitations. Paradigms must be shifted in order to see that the limitations already exist and must be adhered. But how do we do this? One would need a national organization with grassroots levels to create a level of education among voters, community leaders, business owners, and other opinion molders to know the tools that exist to get the federal government to adhere to its limitations. And as you well know, thankfully, such an organization exists. So join the John Birch Society to learn more. Visit jbs.org today. And until next week, we'll see you then.